Imagine a world where money has no meaning. A world where you have so much cash that you spend $2,500 every month just on rubber bands to hold the stacks together. Pablo Escobar had $30 billion. He had the planes, the islands, and the power. But deep inside his fortress, he had a secret obsession that made him feel human. He didn't just want to be the king of cocaine. He wanted to be the king of speed. January 13th, 1988, Medellin, Colombia. The morning silence is shattered by a roar that sounds like the end of the world. 800 kilograms of dynamite explode right in front of the Monaco Building. As the black smoke cleared, the neighbors didn't just see a crumbling skyscraper. They saw a graveyard of automotive legends. One-of-a-kind Porsches, rare Mercedes-Benz Gullwings, and armored vintage Cadillacs, all reduced to scorched, twisted skeletons of steel. The cars were gone, but why did Pablo refuse to bury them? Tonight, we go behind the iron gates of Hacienda Nápoles to uncover the tragic story of the billion-dollar collection that was left to rot as a monument of pure hatred. Long before the world knew him as a monster, Pablo was just a man obsessed with the smell of gasoline and the roar of an engine. In the late 1970s, the streets of Medellin didn't fear him. They cheered for him. Believe it or not, the king of cocaine started his journey in a humble Renault 4. But this wasn't just any economy car. Behind the simple bodywork was a racing beast. Pablo spent a fortune hiring the best mechanics in South America to tune his engine. While other drivers struggled for parts, Escobar had a warehouse full of them. He competed in the famous Copa Renault. On the track, he was aggressive, fearless, and, some say, cheating. Legend has it that his cousins would drive ahead of him to clear the roads, or even drop nails to puncture the tires of his rivals. Whether it was pure skill or cold sabotage, Pablo finished second in the championship. But for Escobar, second place was never enough. This racing era was the only time his passion was legal. Soon, the racetracks weren't enough to hold his ambition. He needed a bigger game, a more dangerous one. And as his wealth grew into the billions, his garage transformed from a racing pit into a royal museum of stolen and smuggled legends. By the mid-1980s, Pablo Escobar wasn't just a man, he was a myth. With cash flowing in faster than he could spend it, his garage at the Monaco Building became a temple of excess. This wasn't a collection of a typical car lover, it was the trophy room of a conqueror. First, there were the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwings. With their iconic doors reaching toward the sky, these were the ultimate symbols of 1950s elegance, smuggled into Colombia just for him. Then, there were the heavyweights. Huge black Rolls-Royce Phantoms from the 1920s and 30s. Pablo loved the idea of old-world royalty. He wanted to sit in the same seats as kings and emperors, even if he had to buy his way into that world. But the most chilling part of his collection? The armored classics. Escobar was obsessed with famous gangsters of the past. He reportedly owned a 1930s Cadillac that he believed belonged to Al Capone himself. He even went as far as shooting the car with a submachine gun, just to make it look like it had survived a real mafia hit. To Pablo, these weren't just machines, they were shields, they were status, and in his mind, they were indestructible. Little did he know, his enemies were already preparing a fire that no amount of armor could survive. Among all the rare jewels in Pablo's garage, there was one car that stood above the rest. A 1938 Porsche 356. But it wasn't the rarity of the car that obsessed him. It was the bloodline he believed it carried. Escobar told everyone who would listen that this specific Porsche was once owned by Adolf Hitler. He claimed it was a personal gift, a piece of dark history smuggled across the ocean just for the king of Medellin. Most historians and car experts call this a pure fantasy. The Porsche 356 didn't even enter full production until after the war. But to Pablo, the truth didn't matter. He loved the myth. He loved the idea of owning something that belonged to another man who had once held the world in his grip. He treated this Porsche like a crown jewel. But in the world of the cartels, even a crown can be melted down in seconds. Everything changed on January 13th, 1988. The Cali Cartel was done playing games. They wanted to send a message that would echo through the streets of Medellin forever. At 5 a.m., while the city was still wrapped in darkness, a nondescript vehicle was parked right in front of the Monaco Building, Pablo's private sanctuary. Inside that car sat 800 kilograms of high-grade dynamite. The blast was so powerful, it was felt for miles. Windows shattered across the neighborhood, and the ground shook like an earthquake. In an instant, the luxury apartments were turned into a skeleton of concrete and dust. Pablo's family survived, but his daughter Manuela would suffer permanent ear damage from the roar of the explosion. But as the dust settled, the real tragedy for a car lover like Pablo was revealed in the basement. The billionaire's garage had become a furnace. The heat was so intense, it melted the tires of the Ferraris and fused the metal of the Rolls-Royces to the floor. The legendary Porsche 356, the Mercedes Gullwings, the armored Cadillacs, they were no longer symbols of power. They were just twisted, blackened monuments of a war that Escobar was now losing. His collection was dead. And for the first time, the king of cocaine felt vulnerable. For any ordinary man, the Monaco bombing would have been a wake-up call, a signal to retreat, to rebuild. But Pablo Escobar was not ordinary. His car collection was gone, but his obsession remained. Instead of clearing the wreckage, Pablo ordered his men to carefully salvage the most recognizable remains. The charred, twisted shell of his beloved Porsche 356, the melted frame of a Mercedes. He transported them hundreds of miles to his infamous Hacienda Nápoles. There, in the lush tropical estate that once housed private zoos and exotic animals, he created something else entirely. A shrine of steel and sorrow. These weren't just relics of a lost past. They were daily reminders. A monument to his enemies, the Cali Cartel. Every morning, as Pablo walked through his sprawling estate, he would see the burnt-out shell of his Porsche. A constant, silent promise of vengeance. He used his loss not to mourn, but to fuel his rage. The twisted metal was a symbol of what he had lost and what he would make his enemies pay for. The war eventually caught up with the King of Medellin. On a cold rooftop in 1993, Pablo's run finally ended. But while the man was gone, his twisted monuments remained. Today, Hacienda Nápoles is no longer a fortress of fear. It's a theme park open to the public. Tourists from all over the world walk past the same rusted skeletons that Pablo once cherished. The Porsche 356, or what's left of it, still sits there, slowly being reclaimed by the Colombian jungle. These cars are the ultimate proof that no amount of wealth can protect you from the consequences of a life of violence. The billion-dollar collection didn't end up in a museum of glory. It ended up as a pile of scrap metal, rotting under the sun. A king without a throne, a garage without its glory. Only the rust remains to tell the story. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more hidden car histories.